Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Jobseeker Chat Series. I am Louise Triance from UK Recruiter, and tonight with S1 Jobs, we're doing a chat about what recruiters are looking for. I'm joined by Lawrence and Marissa, who are popping on and off at the moment. So S1 Jobs is Scotland's see their lovely banner, Scotland's #1 job site, and we're delighted to be working with S1 Jobs to provide their 1 million Scottish job seekers a new interactive way to access advice and guidance to help them succeed in their career. Now, the way that tonight's show will work is if you're watching live, then you can ask a question in the sidebar and we will try to answer it, or you can just comment or interact in the sidebar and we will respond to that. If you're watching it on record, then you can still comment in the sidebar and we will still come back to you. If you're watching the first show, you'll automatically be invited to future shows. So today I'm joined with Marissa and Lawrence. Between us, we've worked out we have over 40 years recruitment experience. Marissa and Lawrence are both active recruiters right now, which means that they are hiring people every day, interviewing all the time, and have seen thousands and thousands of CVs and done maybe thousands of interviews each. We want to talk specifically tonight about what recruiters are looking for. I'm going to hand over to these guys, ask them a few questions, and like I say, ask in the sidebar if you've got any questions as well. So let's kick off with the job advert. So what are recruiters looking for when they put that job advert out? Marissa?
Well, it depends on the specific job advert and whether the job advert is written well enough to enable the right appropriate candidates to apply for the role. It doesn't always give the correct information either. So don't be afraid to kind of come back and ask kind of specific questions around the job spec and kind of understand whether the role would be right for you also.
I mean, the thing with the job advert is in theory, recruiters have all the space in the world nowadays. They're not published in, print publications. They can put in any information they want. But I see as a frustration for a job seeker that they don't always put in that information. They don't put everything in that they know. And why is that?
I think they're looking to attract it sometimes to grow their database. They'll want more candidates coming in. I think people may switch off if the advert's too long, so they want to press quickly. We know a lot of people apply on mobile phones now, so you want to make the advert look good on a mobile phone screen. They're going to be able to read it quickly and apply quickly to it. I suppose it's the second stage then that we're going to go back to them with the full information on the job. The initial is a candidate magnet or an applicant magnet to get people to apply to the job. Make the right kind of people, but maybe not narrow it down too much.
Okay. And I guess, Marissa, if you're an agency recruiter working on behalf of a client, is there a risk that it's an interpretation of what the hiring manager wants? I mean, who writes that job advert when it's an agency?
Well, it can be quite generic, and it depends how much time you get with the hiring manager. If you're fortunate enough to, really get into the crooks and crannies of what that company is, the culture, the ethos, then it gives the recruiter a better chance to be able to write that. However, then some companies are quite precious around kind of what they want, and they will write the job advert themselves. But then obviously we're back to the same debate on whether they're actually providing the full information. However, then that could be the recruiter's job to be able to go back and ask the relevant questions and enable the job advert to be specific enough to, attract the right candidates.
And I think that Lawrence touched on something earlier, actually, which is that a real frustration for a job seeker is when it feels like it's a fishing expedition where they're putting a really generic advert out there and so many different people could apply. And as a job seeker, you're trying to say, I think I'm right for this job. But like you say, Marissa, really what you're saying is, I hope I'm right for this job. Can you give me some more information about why I might be?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, your job specification and understanding what's desirable, what's essential, are obviously very key elements. But effectively, you need to be the right culture fit for the company as well.
Yeah, I think it's also in-house. When I was in-house, sometimes the advert, it was written by marketing finally or HR. So they suffer the same kind of problems as we do as external recruiters, and that it's not what the hiring manager wants. You know, it's something that's been sanitized, and it's a wee bit away from it. And then you get people that perhaps match the job advert, but don't really match what the hiring manager is looking for, which I think can lead to quite a lot of frustration on candidates' parts. They can, you know, they can tick their CV off against the advert, but by the time their CV gets in front of the hiring manager, he's like, "That's not what I want."
No, and that's frustration whether you're a job seeker who's contacting an agency or a company direct, is that the advert is never placed by the typically not placed by the hiring manager. It's the agency, it's HR, or even marketing, as you suggest. And that is a frustration. So getting to the bottom of what the recruiter actually wants from the job advert is not always straightforward. Okay, so the next stage of the process is your CV. Now, I see such a lot of career advice which says how to write a CV for candidates. But as a job seeker, is there a foolproof way of writing a CV? And I'd like both your input separately on this. So Marissa, what do you like to see and what do you tell to people who are applying for jobs about their CV?
What I like to see and what I don't like to see are two different things. What I would typically not like to see is a 20-page CV with literally everything that's been copied and pasted into one job into the next job. Try and make your CV unique. Let it stand out. So there's no typical, there's no format thing has to go in front of the other. But we do see hundreds of CVs, thousands of CVs. So the more unique and the more your CV can stand out is going to make me want to read that first.
Yeah, I think CV has always been in Word format. Yeah, it can be frustrating whether it was in-house or external. A lot of the systems are designed to read Word, so when it comes in PDF, it's hard for the system to pick up, and you may drop out at that stage because there may be enough Word CVs that score highly on artificial intelligence that they're the ones that get pushed through. It needs to be clear and easy to read. I suppose reverse chronological order is the only thing I would say on it, and make sure you've got your contact details on it. The amount of CVs you get through that don't have any contact details, you can't phone anyone.
Yeah.
So you have an email and saying, please give me your phone number. But it may be a rush requirement. By the time you get back to your email with a phone number, you've already drawn up a short list and it's already with the hiring manager. Just sure that it's reverse chronological order for your career. You've got your details on it clearly, and preferably in Word format for me. Yeah. When I was in-house for specific jobs, I liked a tailored CV for that job. Just now when I'm outside an agency, I like a bigger CV that mentions the specifics for the role that they're applying for, but also gives me, you know, a document I can work and then send back to the candidate for approval before I can submit to the client. So I'd rather get more information as an agency recruiter than I did when I was in-house. That mean the client candidate can work together to get one CV before we submit it over to the client.
And that can be a real advantage of working with an agency, is that you can have with the help of the agency, they can help you to tailor the CV. And that's something, I mean, I'm a little bit further from recruiting than you guys, but that's something I would always do, would be to work with that person and say, you know, now that we know a little bit more about what the role is, I'm not going to change anything, but I might take some bits out which are not relevant to this role. And I think somebody had asked about being overqualified, and sometimes it doesn't do to show a massive area of previous experience. completely unrelated to the role, you should never remove a job from your CV, but focus on the bits which are most pertinent to this role you're applying for.
What I don't like in CVs is I'm a team player, I can work.
Yeah, or I'm a bubbly character.
So difficult. So I wanted to talk about adding the personal profile. So do you like to see a personal profile? Do you like to see I am enthusiastic, I'm a team player? Do you like to see that on a CV? Marissa?
I like to see a personal profile, but but specific to that job.
Yeah.
Sorry, specific, not kind of the generic things that you see in just every CV, you know. I've got an outgoing personality. I'm not going to say that I don't like people. You know, let's keep it kind of focused and use the words that are going to help you get the job.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. Your CV is your first opportunity to stand out from the rest of the candidates. So using generic formatting around enthusiastic, bubbly, team player, we've all got those qualities that we can fall into in one form or another. That short profile about yourself, just a couple of sentences long, specific to that role, just gives us a snapshot and wants us to read on. So yeah, I would try and take away from kind of what you are as a person and how you are going to be best tailored to that role.
Okay, and on that note, I've got another tip. So I've seen a lot of CVs in my life, and one of the mistakes I see is that people list their responsibilities, and if they list their achievements, they do it in a very generic way. So what I really like to see is the responsibility you had and what the impact that was. So I don't just want to see I was head of sales and we increased turnover year on year. You want to see I was head of sales managing this number of people, and the personal impact I made was this, and the overall team impact we made was that. Because when you're looking through an awful lot of CVs, it's actually when you see that level of detail where you can see what the achievement was that it makes a difference. Trying to scan through a lot of CVs, and unfortunately that's what you're up against, is unless you've got a really rare skill set, you're applying to a job where there's a lot of other people who maybe have very similar skills, and what you're doing is you need to differentiate yourself. And by having the ways in which you have previously shown success on your CV, as a recruiter, we're drawn to candidates like that, aren't we?
Definitely. I was recruiting a business development role last week, and only one of the business development guys put on his sales what he achieved against target each year. And I'm thinking, you know what? You're the standout candidate. The rest of them had the same responsibilities as him, you know, to grow the business, to find, you know, look after existing customers. But no sales figures, know how they done against target. It was just on his CV, he was miles to that candidate.
No.
I was just going to say that I agree with that. You know, recruiters are going to go through hundreds of CVs potentially for one role. We don't have time to speak to everyone. So kind of drawing out that information from you on the phone, you know, kind of puts you to the back of the queue. If it's there in front of you, targets, figures, exactly like Lawrence said, then, you know, the phone call is going to be picked up to you first and foremost.
No, absolutely. And that's what you're looking to achieve. You're looking to be the candidate who is contacted first, the individual who you'll go to first. And one of the tips is make sure your CV matches up with what's on LinkedIn. It doesn't need to have the same amount of detail on LinkedIn, but I've seen people who have missed jobs off their CV, which they've put on LinkedIn, or vice versa, or the years don't match up. And unfortunately, they're just warning signs for a recruiter. So we need to avoid things like that. Make it very simple for someone to go, yes, that's the right person. Okay, guys, my next question, cover CVs. So I hear a lot of frustration from job seekers that they think that they are investing quite a lot of time in, not cover CVs, cover letters. They're investing quite a lot of time in writing a cover letter. They're tailoring it to the client. They're saying why they've always wanted to work for that company. And then they hear that recruiters just don't read those cover letters. So Marissa, do you read the cover letters? are they important?
Personally, no. I honestly, I don't have the time to read a cover letter as well as a CV, draw out the content of your CV. So it's not something that I would normally do. However, a colleague in my office will read the cover letter before they read the content of the CV. So Lawrence, I don't know if you're better to answer that and whether you do or not.
I do read them. I've got less time to read them now as an agency recruiter than I had as an in-house recruiter, so there's definitely a time pressure on them. I suppose it's scanning over them, and if it's right and it's starting ticking things against the job profile or the person spec, I'm like, yeah, it'll pique my interest. I don't think there's anything to be lost by doing one. You're only giving yourself the chance that somebody's going to read it. If you don't do one, you can't get benefit of that a cover letter can potentially give you. Sometimes you get some cracking cover letters. You're like, yeah, really want to speak to this person. I've never thrown a CV in the bin because it was a bad cover letter. It's never affected. So I think, yeah, definitely do a cover letter. It can only enhance your chances of getting the job or getting on that shortlist.
And I'd agree. And I think that it's very difficult when you know that sometimes it's not going to be read. And I know so many recruiters who just get so many CVs, they can't read those cover letters. But like you, Lawrence, when there are some who do, let's write a cover letter, let's tailor it, let's invest some time in that as well. And I'll tell you another reason why it's worth doing that is that if you can't be bothered to write a cover letter, if you can't find a compelling reason to apply for that job, then it's possibly not a job you really want. So I know it's extra time. I know it can be frustrating if you're not sure it's been read, but it's also a sort of preparation for that interview if you get it, in that you're thinking about why you want to work with that business and you're thinking about why that role is right for you. Got two questions which come in the sidebar. One which is, how many references and testimonials should I send along with the CV? Now, I don't like to see references and testimonials on a CV, but where did you two stand? Lawrence is shaking his head.
Not for me either.
No. And Marissa,
no? No, not for me either.
Okay. I have to say it is an absolute no for me, is that there is not a recruiter in the land who would feel uncomfortable in reaching out for references at the stage at which they need them. So I just don't think they should be included. I mean, I guess if Richard Branson was going to be a reference, perhaps include him, but maybe if there's anyone else, don't bother. And the other question is, so Marissa, what do you think of paying to get a professional to create your CV? Don't like that either.
No, don't do it. I say this very loosely. There should not be one recruiter out there will not take the time to sit and speak with a candidate or a person that is asking for tips and advice around their CV. That is our job. That is what we should do. If you are a recruitment agency with a personable approach, then that should be for free.
Definitely. I think another point, isn't it, that they've done your professional CV for what job? Your CV needs to be tailored for each job you apply for. Only pay for a tailored CV for each job. When, as Marissa said, as recruitment agents, that's what we'll do for you. But we also have inside knowledge from the client, that can better inform that CV that we produce.
And I think that as a friend, I've helped loads and loads of people with their CVs. And sometimes you just need a third party who is slightly impartial to say, I'm not sure that's really explaining what you did. I'm not really sure you've articulated where your skills are. Yes, definitely go to a recruiter who if you're applying for a job, ask a recruiter to help you. And there are some really great people I know who do CVs, but they tend not to be these mass CV writing businesses. They tend to be individuals who perhaps do some coaching alongside it and help with interview tips alongside that. And for some people, that is actually necessary. You do get to a stage where you just don't know why you're not getting those interviews. And that's perhaps when you should think about getting external help.
I really believe, sorry, Lawrence, that you shouldn't have somebody that writes your CV for you. it's a conversation, and exactly like you just said, Louise, it's coaching. It's drawing that information out of an individual for them then to make it their own. Kingsley Consulting have a job club that support the disadvantaged getting into work. So that's anything from the homeless, people with mental health issues, disability, and we also support ex-military service leavers. And that's exactly the service that we provide. It's a conversation to draw out their skill sets to then be able to translate that on paper and then what may be attractive to the hirer.
Absolutely.
The coaching, I know, I suppose it's an extension of the CV conversation. After that, for the shortlist, you're then about the interview.
Mm-hmm.
We have 3 or 4 phone calls with them. We'll say, look, these are questions that are likely to be asked. You know, what your strengths and weaknesses. It seems to be ubiquitous in kind of job interviews. So you've got to make sure your candidate's prepared for that. You know, you run over the scenarios, because sometimes you have the candidates that their first job change in 10 years. They're not familiar with the interview, and it's an agency recruiter, you can invest your time there, and that's where I suppose we can make a real difference for candidates, is making sure it's possible for that job interview.
We're doing a show in exactly a month's time on interview tips and tricks, because I think that there's an awful lot of ways in which you can have a mismatch between what you're looking for when you're looking for a job and what the hiring manager or the interviewer is looking for when they're seeing you. So we'll cover a lot of those in that show, I hope, Lawrence. So one of the things I think recruiters talk about a lot more is culture fit. And I think always recruiters and employers have wanted to have someone who fits into their organisation. But I think they are looking for this culture fit. Now, as a job seeker, how on earth are you meant to know what the culture is? You know, I mean, if it's Cadbury's, I guess you can say it's fun and there's loads of chocolate. But in a normal organisation, you don't know. As a job seeker, how are you meant to know what the culture is? And how are you meant to express that? What do you think about that, Marissa?
It's a difficult one, that is, because I think as an agency recruiter, that is easier as a part of our job to be able to draw out whether that candidate is suitable for the role from a cultural point of view. If you are a job seeker, drawing out from a job advert and applying directly, then that becomes your responsibility to understand what the culture would be through research, and that's through their website. And then you could argue, and there's the debate on whether that website would be able to show you what the culture and what the ethos of the company is, or it is about. If you're unsure, there's always, or more often than not, a web email address or contact number, or direct to the hirer to be able to kind of draw out that information. You don't be afraid to pick up the phone to try and understand a little bit more about the company that you're just about to apply for. That is your responsibility as a job seeker also.
Which brings me on to point out.
Use your social networks. So use your social networks. Find out who you know that may work at that company or may know someone that works at that company. You know, and meet with them and have a chat about it, get to understand it more. I think, you know, so this is a living, and it's kind of second nature to us as a job seeker. Hopefully you're not going to do it, you know, every 2 weeks. It's going to be every few years you're going to be doing this. So they're not going to be as practical. You need to pull in every resource you can.
So what I would do is, if I'd seen an advert for a local business or a national business, I didn't really know much about them, I would absolutely first look at my own social network. So I'd go on to my LinkedIn network and I'd see who my first level connections were. Probably none. My second, my third, I'd see how I was connected to people who work there in a very, very non-stalkerish way, because that's not what we're trying to achieve. We're just trying to see whether we know people who work in that business who we can ask about. I'd look on Twitter. I'd look at their profile on Twitter, and that would give me a very clear indication of the type of their business they are, is the information they're putting out on Twitter. I'd look on YouTube to see whether they've got anything on YouTube, whether they've spoken at a conference or an expo, and see the type of individuals they have in the business and the type of messaging they're doing. I'd look at their, like you say, the website, Marissa. I'd look at their About Us page. I'd look at their mission statement. In bigger businesses, that can be something which is a little bit more removed from the everyday that you're going to get in that business. But in a smaller business, that'll be written by the MD or the marketing director with a very small pool of individuals involved in it who are key to the business. Now, the thing about culture fit is that you don't know what they're looking for, but you know who you are. And the really important thing for Jobseeker is that you do not want to end up in a company which does not suit you. So it's not just about you trying to say, oh yeah, I'm fun and bubbly. Oh yeah, I do all the things you do and I'm exactly that type of person. Oh, international travel, that's my bag. You want to make sure that where you end up is where's going to make you happy. Because even though it's perfectly all right to change jobs every 2 years now, you don't want to have to move on because the people you're working with and the ethos of the business is nothing like what you're like. So like you said, Marissa, I think you owe it to yourself to try to find out more. I think you've got a very positive outlook on whether companies will take a call from a job seeker. And I think many of us, when we've been looking for jobs, have experienced situations where we think, is this impossible for me to get through to somebody? But absolutely, there's no harm in trying it. There's no harm in showing that you're interested enough to want to know whether this business is right for you. So no, I like that idea. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was some of this stuff, which is the hidden agenda stuff, the stuff you can't influence. And when you're looking for a job, I think that there's lots of times where you might say, I've heard it, I was perfect for that job. I didn't even get an interview. Do either of you want to come to me with a couple of ideas of why that might be?
A really strong field. Maybe you did match everything on the job spec, but maybe when the hiring manager's seen it, other things that are useful to them that weren't on the job spec. It could be a backdoor reference that someone's not too flattering about you. The hiring managers thought you're the best of all. There could have been, especially internally, sometimes they advertise it and never got a preferred candidate. It's more or less a done deal. They're going through the motions. It's hard to say. There's a lot of things that are out with your disclosure control.
Okay, so let's just talk about those in a bit more detail. So the first thing you said there was really strong field, and there's stuff in the spec that you might not know about as a job seeker. So Marissa, as a recruitment agency, we talked about this earlier, how much of what you know do you give to a candidate before you interview, before you even see them? So when you're screening CVs, what percentage of what you know about the job do you think a job seeker knows?
Tough. That's a tough question.
Glad you got it.
But it's not all of it, is it? They don't know everything.
No, it's not. Do we get on the taboo subject of discrimination and things? I don't know.
Well, it can come under culture sometimes, isn't it, Marissa? There's things a client has said they want, which could come under culture, which could come under environment, which could come under team fit, which not because it's necessarily illegal, but because it's not, you don't share everything you know.
No, if you've got somebody applying for a role and they're a massive Liverpool fan and they've put it all over their CV, and you know that your client's a massive Everton fan, there are some things that they're just hidden agendas, and they're just things that that you need to ensure that you're putting the correct candidates forward for the correct role. And unfortunately there are some hidden agendas, and football being a massive one. If you've got a Liverpool supporter that's going in and they're massive Liverpool fans, then happy days. And but Yeah, Lawrence, anything else?
Yeah, I think we share more the more conversations we have with them. You know, as we're trying to whittle down the field, because I suppose at the beginning you don't want to turn everyone off and realise, wait a minute, I couldn't get Mr. 100%, 90%, 8% perfect, and I put everybody that's below that off because I've shared everything with them. So I think there's that, and I suppose it is cultural fit. It's hard to say. It's not just football. You just, if you can think the personalities are going to clash, if you just can't see them getting on, it's not going to be right for the job seeker, and it's not going to be right. You've got to make what you think is going to be a happy marriage, and
yeah, and that is some information you don't necessarily share. It's not appropriate to share. It's not appropriate to share. Hiring manager is a bit of an egomaniac, and so he needs people who can cope with an egomaniac. You're probably not going to share that in the job advert, and you're probably not going to share that in the screening. And I think as a job seeker, you may never know that. The other thing you mentioned was the backdoor reference, and I think this is something which happens probably more than we realise. So I've seen this many times. So a candidate applies, and they used to work at company X. Now, Susan in accounts used to work at company X. So the hiring manager will say, Susan, do you know Fred, who's just applied for this job? And Susan will give a backdoor reference on Fred, and Fred will never know that's happened. And it's very, very difficult for Fred to do anything about that. Now, there's a couple of things you can do. One of the things you can do is, no matter where you work, be a decent person, work the hardest you can work. Even if you're about to leave, please still carry on doing your job. Don't take the confidential information with you when you leave. All those things. Be a nice person. Be the sort of person people want to employ. But if Susan didn't like Fred, there's very little Fred can do about it. And I think that more and more companies, because of the way LinkedIn works, they can see who Susan in account knows, or where Susan in accounts used to work. And I do know that happens. Through an agency, are you ever asked to take up informal references before that final interview, Lawrence?
Yeah, definitely. Recruiting utilities infrastructure, and they like some kind of informal reference carried out, not written. And I suppose this is sometimes where it's better to go through an agency, because we have a bit of sway with the hiring managers, and we can say, well, when did they know that person? 20 years ago they worked on a site together, and they didn't. Things change in 20. Are we going to write off a really good candidate because somebody he's not going to be in contact with your company didn't like him on a site 20 years ago? I think we're all different people from what we were 20 years ago. So as an individual, when you're applying, you don't get the chance to put that across. But if you're working with a good recruiter, they will get that chance to put that across for you. I think this is where candidates really have to be open and honest with the recruiter and say, look, if there are any skeletons or anything, like any issues that I think you have, be upfront so that we can help you kind of tackle those before they become a block to you.
Yeah. I totally agree, and that that is one of the benefits of going through an agency. And as Lawrence quite rightly said, if you get a good recruiter, we have the ability to educate our client. And if we go armed with all of the information and say, look, got this candidate, exactly what you're looking for. However, X, Y, Z. I think this might be advantageous for you because of X, Y, Z. And then, we've got that ability to be able to say, look, it's worth having that conversation, having that chat, and proceed on interview and make your own judgment and observation from that.
I see so many job seekers advising other job seekers to avoid agencies at all costs. They're just out to make money. They want to get their fee. But, if you don't get the right person, the right job, the ramifications are great. So, A, you've screwed up someone's life. B, you don't get the fee, because nearly all of us have to either return the fee or work on a replacement basis. And the third thing, which is actually even more important than whether you get the fee, is that most recruiters work in a niche. And once word gets out that all you've done is place candidates who cannot stay and hate the jobs, you just don't get any more work. So I think that recruiters genuinely do want the right person to get the right job, and they want to make the connection work. And I think that what you're both saying here is there's actually lots of ways that when you're looking for a job, you can get even more from your recruiter.
definitely. I mean, I think I understand. I don't know, the fourth most important decision you're going to make, who you work for, you know, buying a house, having children, and then who you work for. You know, we do care about the people we place. You know, hopefully they stay long term, but hopefully they recommend other people to work for us as well. If we aren't good at a job and don't treat people well, we don't have a business with a candidates. We don't get any fees at all, which is definitely not what we want, because we do like fees.
Well, yeah, no, definitely. And you know, recruitment businesses are made around commercials, and charging a fee is how we make our business evolve. But taking the emotional side out of it, you know, recruiters wanting to be good people and wanting to help people from a commercial aspect, if we don't do our job correctly, then we've got to do it again, and we've got to do it at a reduced fee. So we need to get it right first time, and ensure that we're doing all the relevant checks and asking the relevant questions to ensure that, you know, we can run our business effectively.
Something I do hear job seekers say, which is annoying, or I don't know, it's a stereotype which is probably untrue, but it's the, you know, the frustration that the recruitment agency works for the client, not for you. So they don't work for you when you're looking for a job, they work for the client. But frankly, companies don't. Nobody in the process works for the job seeker. This is what makes it so frustrating for the job seeker, for you guys, is that nobody's working for you. Everyone's got an agenda. And what we will try to unpick during this session and through the other 5 in this series is how you can make the most of the way in which the odds are stacked. And they're not necessarily stacked against you. And working with a great agency or a hiring manager who knows what they're doing, and there's loads of great HR people, will help you get the right job. You have to work with somebody else in this process. And if it's an agency, definitely make the most of them. So the final thing, we're up to nearly 40 minutes and we're running short on time. So the final thing, and like I say, we're going to do a show on interview tips and techniques anyway. But the final thing I want to talk about was the interview, and what a recruiter is really looking for in an interview. At the most simplest level, what are they looking for, and how, as a job seeker, can you get that across? Can I ask you to take it in turn? So Marissa, if you want to go first and just give me a bit about what you think about that element.
For me, the interview is all about personality. We have seen your CV, we've seen your skill set, we've spoken to you from an agency point of view and drawing that information out, drawing figures out around sales, drawing out your achievements. People buy from people, and don't be afraid to be able to sit there and show your personality. It can be far more of an advantage than a disadvantage. We would have tried to suss out already whether you are the right cultural fit for the business, and that's your responsibility for us to believe, knowing that you as a candidate and knowing the hiring manager in the business, to be able then to go and demonstrate that to them.
Okay.
Yeah,
Lawrence?
I'm just going to echo what I said there, whether it was in-house or just now with an agency. Well, look, and I knew that you want that job, you want to join that company, that you're going to be, you know, what you're spending as a hiring manager, that he's going to be spending a significant part of his, you know, you're going to be an asset to the company as an individual. But as I said, we've checked the skills. We'll both didn't have the skills, you wouldn't be in the room. This is more about, I suppose, the cultural fit, the passion that you have for the job, and kind of the drive. You've committed, you've got some commitment, you've learned about the company, and it is in your CV. You know, if you have said, you know, I'm dedicated, but you're shown that, whether that's by, you know, you've researched the company, I'd really like to work here because, and you that's the company you've learned, and I think it's shown that passion. Just been in some interviews where you get one-word answers. We do not want that. Or, you know, and very little back from people until it's their turn to, is the canteen subsidised? is your priority list and your questions you should be asking. If number one is the canteen subsidised, I see this as a career for me. I really want to work here.
Yeah, and I think that when we do the show about interview tips and tricks, the 3 questions that every single person going for an interview should ask, we will share those. And there are questions you should absolutely ask. You should never not ask a question. I've got a sort of summary of what I think about the interview, but I've just seen a question in the sidebar that I wanted to ask, which is from Wendy, who says, as a recruiter, would you ever ask someone if they wanted to be put forward for a job and then not put them forward? Why would that happen? Now, Lawrence?
Yep, I would do that, but I would inform them they hadn't went forward for the job, and it could be that only wants to see 3 CVs, and I may have 3, and a great one comes in that kind of knocks them out the shortlist. I ask, everyone that I'm going to speak matches up. I do, they're asked, do they want to go forward? I suppose depends on the standard of the recruiter. You can also inform people when their CV's been sent, saying, look, that is now forward for the job, but also take the time to go back and say to other people and explain why. So, not this time, but if these candidates are unsuccessful, I think the standard that if the job comes round again. We need to be honest with our candidates, and I think people appreciate that. That people get frustrated about what's happened, and everyone I think can understand. So, look, there was only 3 CVs. You were in the top 3. Another candidate came in who was better than you.
And that's so frustrating. Sorry, Lawrence. It's so frustrating to hear when you're told that, because of course we do, when we read the job spec, when we see the advert, we can see how we match up. But it is coming back to all these little bits of information that the recruiter has or the hiring manager has, which as a job seeker we just don't have. And to hear that I'm going to put you forward, you're great, and then to have actually someone slightly better came in, that's just a message you must deliver, and it's great that you do, Lawrence, because I know not every recruiter does. But it's a horrible, horrible thing to hear when you felt so confident you were going to be put forward for a job.
If we think, if you only want 3, we will try and get the 4 in front of the.
Yes.
Don't get me wrong, but if the client it's only 3, we've got to be honest. I think as a recruiter.
It's a flawed process.
You've got a personal brand, haven't you? You've got a personal brand you need to look after. And if you're not honest to someone when they go away, they're going to tell their friends, look, told me I was going. And one way or another, people will find out if they haven't been forward for that job, because they'll know somebody that eventually works at the company or something.
Yeah.
Credibility.
Yeah, I totally agree. Communication from a recruiter is absolutely key, whether you like what's coming from them or not. Honesty is absolutely the best policy. And like Lawrence says, if we have the ability to push an extra CV in the direction of the client, then we will absolutely do so and explain that is what we're doing.
Yeah, no, I like that. So I was going to give my 2 penneth on the, which shows my age using that phrase, on the what's being looked for in an interview. And I think that sometimes when we're being interviewed, we think we're trying to be caught out. So as a job seeker, you think you're being asked all these questions, these tricky questions about give me an example of when, or what's your biggest weakness? And it can feel like you're trying to be caught out by the interviewer. But really what the interviewer is trying to do is to find the ways in which you're perfect for this role. None of us are trying to find the ways in which the candidate is rubbish. We're trying to find the way in which you match our spec. So give us everything you can to help us make that connection. So like you said, Lawrence, don't give a 1-word answer. I mean, don't waffle on for 20 minutes. But when we ask you to give us can you give me an example of when? Don't say yes. Just give us that example. Give us as much detail as we can. Have done your research so you know what the hiring manager or the agency is looking for, and then give them all the arsenal you can give them that says, I am the right person for this job. And that's what increases your chances, I think, as a job seeker. As I said earlier when I spoke over you, Lawrence, it is a flawed process. I think we all recognise that it's not perfect. And there's a lot of balls up in the air as we go through this recruitment process. As a job seeker, the best thing you can do is to work with an agency like Lawrence has or like Marissa has, where you get that level of communication where you can ask an honest question, get an honest answer. And don't get too disheartened if you come across a rubbish company with a rubbish recruitment process, because unfortunately it will happen. But that's not the company you should be working for.
Exactly.
So any final tips? You don't have to give them, but if you want to, Lawrence, do you have a final tip?
I would say be open and honest. Pick a recruiter that you feel that you've got a relationship with and work with them. You know, you can work with multiple, but not too many. You don't want your CV going everywhere and anywhere without your knowledge. But build a relationship with your recruiter and they'll put more time in on your behalf. And I think you touched earlier that nobody works for the candidates. You know, in some occasions, you know, we've got good relationships. We do actually. We say, well, I am going to find you a job. You know, you start speaking and trying to create jobs for someone that you genuinely believe is a great candidate, and you think, well, they've got the cultural fit for that company. There's no job, but if I, speak to the hiring manager and explain how good a candidate I've got, but that comes with, I think, the candidate's been really open and honest and willing to spend time building a relationship with us.
Okay, that's great. And Marissa?
I echo that. For Kingsley, as you can see on our banner, candidate care is the absolute key to our business. Without candidates, we don't have a business, because then we can't build relationships with our clients because we've got no candidates to fill the jobs. So building, like Lawrence said, that relationship with the recruiter is not to ever be put to the back of the queue. And for me, personality, it really, really is so important that if you can demonstrate a personality to your recruiter, that will then ooze over to the client. People buy from people, so don't ever forget you as an individual.
Okay, that is superb. Thank you so much for your time, Marissa and Lawrence. And thank you again to S1 Jobs who have supported this. We are back next week on Tuesday talking about staying positive during the job search. And I know that can be really hard work for some of us. So I will thank you again, and we will see you in a week's time. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, bye.